almost a year ago, or maybe it was a little bit more, I caved in and I read this book that was really popular on TikTok at the time called The Deal. I remember having a lot of fun. The characters were not perfect by any means, but I remember having fun reading it, and also this book it opened myself to new subjects, to learning about new things that I had no idea how it worked, because The Deal was actually the second time I ever consumed anything hockey related. The first time, and until that time the only thing hockey related I ever consumed, was that iconic movie from Disney that I watched as a kid. And by the time I read The Deal, I had no idea how hockey worked. Right now I know a little bit more. But going back to the topic, I remember having quite a bit of fun reading The Deal, and then later I found out The Deal is actually the first book in a 5-book series called the Off-Campus series. And while the first book was not perfect by any means, but was still fun, I wanted to read the rest of the series. The only problem was that the books were kind of expensive for ebooks. The physical copies were not available for me to purchase, at least I couldn't find anywhere. But recently, the Off-Campus series got included in the Kindle Unlimited library. And you know, I can read these books for a fraction of the price that they were at the beginning. So now I want to continue reading the series. And we have 4 books in series. I believe the order is The Mistake, The Score, The Goal, and The Legacy. The covers for all these books are hideous. By the way, I don't know who made the executive decision to make these the covers, but they are bad. But hopefully the inside of the book is not as bad. Even though I did, throughout this year I've been a part of this series, I did hear some people say the characters are kind of problematic. I will be dividing the reviews of these books in 2 sections. The first one will be without any spoilers, and at the end of the video I'll put on a warning when the section starts, and then we'll talk with the spoilers of this book. So let's dive in, and maybe I can finish reading these books when hockey season starts again, which I'm not sure when it does start. I think I'm filming this introduction on the 1st of October, and it's mid-October, I don't know. Probably somewhere, I don't know when start. I need to go to Google and search when the hockey season starts. And maybe we can do this kind of a thematic video, and I can pretend I am a person that watches sports on a regular basis. So let's dive into the book. Let's dive into The Mistake by Elle Kennedy. Wait, I don't remember knowing this in the first book, but apparently Logan has a crush on Hannah, who is the main character on the first book, and okay. Hello, so it's been a while. Today is the 7th. I think I started reading in the 1st of October, so it took me 6 days to finish this book, which is quite surprising because this is an easy book to read. It's not very long, but in my defense, I am reading a few other books at the same time, and I've been kind of busy with some other stuff, but also I'll talk a little bit more when we get to my opinions on the book. So The Mistake follows Logan, or John Logan, and Grace. Grace is a 19-year-old, I think she studies psychology. She wants to be a psychologist. So yeah, she's studying something along those lines, or I think she still hasn't really declared her major, but that's what she plans on majoring. And she's just your regular average college student that went to study and is focusing more on studying and biting and fighting and fighting and finding a boyfriend. And Logan is one of, I think it's the defenseman of the college no, not football, from the college hockey team. And he's a star player for the team. He's also a body animal. He's a man whore, and he's very popular. He's one of the most popular people on campus. And at the beginning of the book, he's not in a great mental state because he's dealing with the fact that he likes his best friend's girlfriend, so Hannah, which is the main girl from the first book, the deal. And besides his romantic life conundrum, the drama in his romantic life, he's also dealing with the fact that even though he really wants to become a professional hockey player and apply for the draft, he's dealing with the fact that he probably won't achieve his dreams because he believes it's his duty to, instead of following his dreams of becoming a professional hockey player, he believes it's his duty to give up on his dreams to take care of his alcoholic father who suffered a really bad accident years ago and he has some mobility issues. And throughout all this time he was in college, his older brother was taking care of his father, and Logan believes it's his duty that after he graduates, he should give up on his dreams and focus on taking care of his father, even though he doesn't really want to do that. So mentally, he's not in a good place. Grace and Logan, they then meet, or at least Grace remembers meeting Logan at a random party, but he's very, very drunk, so he doesn't remember her because he's drunk and he has been drunk for a majority of the time, apparently, that has taken place between the deal and the mistake because he's not in a great place mentally. And he basically doesn't remember Grace, but she remembers him. And then one day he gets the wrong address for a party and he ends up knocking at her door. And turns out he forgot his phone. So she lets him in so he can use her phone. And wow, it's raining. I don't know if you could hear the thunder that just happened. But going back, and let's dive into my opinion of this book without giving you any spoilers. Spoilers will be at the end of the video, but without any spoilers. I gave this book 3 stars. On the first book this happened, but on the second book I think it was in a way more, it got more my attention. The characters, they can say and they can have, and their inner monologue can be like questionable is not the word, but like it's a choice, some of the things they say. And also this book I saw on Goodreads, just like the deal, it was released on 2015 and it feels like this is a 2015 book. I think it's because of the way they talk, or I don't know, it feels like a 2015 book, which and also Grace, just like Hannah, she feels like I'm not like other girls kind of character, especially at the beginning of the book. She's very, I'm not like other girls, which can be annoying. And yeah, very 2015, like, girl, you're like every other girl. There's nothing really special about you. But also there were things I really enjoyed about this book. I think it was like a fun read if you just need something like an escapist novel. If you need something that is just for fun, this is a good option. And also one thing, oh my god, I didn't expect to appreciate more, because at first when it started I was kind of not very much of a fan of it, but then I needed to remember that Grace is a 19-year-old character, so it makes sense for her to act that way. But the third act conflict, I like the third act conflict, and if you want to know why, we'll talk more about it in the spoilery section. But just to close these my thoughts on the mistake, I remember having way more fun reading The Deal. One of the reasons I took so long to read such a short, fun book actually was because I wasn't necessarily being pulled towards reading this book. If I wasn't doing this video, I think it would have taken even more. One of the main reasons I actually managed to finish this book in only 5 days is because this is a Kindle book and I have the Kindle app on my phone, so when I was on the go, it was really easy to just pick up and continue to read it. So let's start reading the third book in this series, which is The Scar, and I believe this is the novel about Dean and Ali. I've read exactly 50% of The Scar, so let me tell you a little bit about the books and what I'm thinking about it so far. So The Scars follow Dean and Ali. If you read The Deal, you know the main characters, Garrett and Hannah, so keep that in mind because they will be important for the explanation of the plot. So Dean is Garrett's best friend and his roommate, and Ali, she's Hannah's best friend and roommate. We start the book by finding out that Ali just broke up with her longtime boyfriend, Sean, and Sean is not taking it very well. He has been messaging and trying to talk to her all the time. He has been calling, and he wants to talk to Ali because he's not dealing well with the breakup, he's not accepting well the breakup. He wants to get back together with her, even though by this time apparently they have already broken up like 4 times or something like that. But Sean wants to get back with Ali, but Ali doesn't want to get back with Sean. Hannah, they travel out of town and Ali is there alone in her dorm, and Sean messages her saying he's going to go there, he's going to go to her dorm because he wants to talk things out with her. But Ali is not having it. She is kind of scared, she's uncomfortable about the idea of talking with her ex-boyfriend alone. So Garrett offers Ali to go spend the weekend at his house because his room is empty and 2 of his roommates are supposed to be there. So if Sean figures out where Ali is, at least she won't be alone. And Ali, because she really doesn't want to see Sean, she takes Garrett on her offer and goes spend the weekend at his house. But when she gets there, she quickly figures out that only one roommate is at the house, and that roommate is Dean. She's not like the biggest fan of Dean because he keeps flirting with her and is trying to get in her bed all the time, and she doesn't want that because she's a relationship girly. She doesn't do hookups, which is basically the only thing Dean does. Dean doesn't do relationships. So the personality already don't match, and besides that, there is also the fact that Dean is her best friend and roommate's boyfriend's best friend, and she doesn't want to do nothing with Dean. But because she doesn't want to be alone with her thoughts and be alone or be at her dorm in case Sean shows up and tries to talk with her, or he keeps texting her and she ends up texting him back, she decides to spend the weekend at Garrett's house with Dean. And she also gives Dean her phone because she just doesn't want to deal with Sean's constantly texts and calls. But on the first night, Ali and Dean gets very, very drunk and they hook up. And in the words of one of the characters in the book, Dean imprints on Ali
It's like gravity.
And I think we can already dive into my opinions because so far I'm having a lot of fun with this book. I think this book is more fun than the previous ones and the mistake. I also having way more fun reading this one than I had reading The Deal. It's not a Pulitzer Prize winning book at all. Like the characters still they have some of the same problems I saw in the first two books in the series, in the sense that some are part of their inner monologue, or some of the things they do is a choice, and I think some people can find problem with that. Honestly, I'm going to this book thinking and going into this book because it is fun. I'm not expecting the pinnacle of literary creativity and the pinnacle of. I'm not expecting this to be one of those life changing, oh my god, I'm in love with the writing, I'm in love with the plot kind of books. I'm going into this book purely for the fun, and I think this is the right way to go into this book. I don't know for you, but for me, when the main girl in a romance novel she compares the main guy's attention span to the one of a fruit fly and his affection giving tendencies to the one of a puppy. This book is meant to be fun, and by the time this quote showed up, I was already having a lot of fun, and after that quote showed up, I was having more fun. So I finished reading this card, and why was that my favorite book from the Off Campus series? Like again, the characters they say or they think some things that are like, yeah, okay. Sometimes they are kind of sexist and homophobic, but still, it was just so fun. Why did this book had me giggling? It's just so fun, and that's basically the only update I'll have for you. Like the third act conflict, it made sense. I didn't hate it, which is saying something because I usually hate the third act conflicts or the third act breakups. I'll save the rest for the spoilery section, but I think I already said everything I could say about the scores. I gave it 4.5 stars. It's not perfect by any means, but if you want a good time, if you want a funny rom-com, like this score might be it for you. I read the final section, the author's note, and Elle Kennedy said, "Oh, I had so much fun writing this book," and you can tell she had so much fun writing that book because it translated. It's a fun book. It was a good time. Now let's start the go, which is Tucker's book, and I'm kind of like on the fence about it already because it is accidental pregnancy trope, which is not necessarily my favorite, but maybe it's good, so let's try it. Okay, so it took me way longer to finish the series than I expected. Also, I'm aware the lighting in Sleep is not great, but our options were dark or bad lighting, and I chose a light. Let's get into the books because I finally finished. I read both the Go and the Legacy. So let's start by the Go. The Go is the actual last book in the series. It follows Tucker and Sabrina. Tucker is the quiet guy on the friend group, the one that cooks, and he's good at doing home stuff. And then we have Sabrina. She is a very ambitious, hardworking woman. She doesn't come from a great family, but that only motivates her even more to work really hard and achieve her goals, which she has this very specific plan she has been following for a very, very long time. So I guess it's not a spoiler because this is a trope and it appears in the scar, but it is a surprise pregnancy trope novel. So we follow in this book Tucker and Sabrina meet, and then they start dating, and then Sabrina gets pregnant. And honestly, knowing the trope made me a bit reluctant to start reading this book because surprise pregnancy, it's not my favorite. So it took me like a week maybe to have the courage to pick and start reading the book, which I didn't have high expectations of because of the trope, but I did. And I took way longer than I expected to finish the book because of this trope. If you read the score, you know there was something going on with Tucker, which was kind of a secret, and in this book we figure it out because how this book takes place in parallel with the plot of the score, and the other half it is after the score. I guess it's because of that until around halfway through the book, for me, I thought the pacing was a bit weird. It felt like it dragged. It was not necessarily the greatest pacing and kind of boring, and that's, I believe, in part because we kept reliving the things that happened in the score through the point of view of Tucker and Sabrina, and in some moments it was funny, it was interesting, but at others, especially when they start talking about Bo, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but when we start talking about that character, it gets kind of boring. And I understand why repeating this plot point in this book as well, but like that part was already not my favorite in the book, in this car, and in this one also like reliving that was kind of But then we have the second half of the book, and then the pacing gets better. Overall, I believe, this book 3.5 stars. I'll talk more about it in the spoilery section. Now let's go to The Legacy. The Legacy, this is a newer book. I thought it was released around the same time as the other ones, which the Lift of Campus series was released between 2015 and 2016. And The Legacy actually was released in 2021. So The Legacy is basically a spin-off. There are 4 novellas following the 4 couples, and we follow them, I believe it's 4 years after what happened or the plot or the last book in the series. I heard mixed opinions about it on TikTok. Some people really hating on Garrett, so I also was a bit apprehensive when going into it, especially on the character section. But I understand why people wouldn't like the character section, but honestly, it makes sense. But going back to the Legacy, we have 4 novellas. The first one, I don't remember the names, but the first one follows Logan and Grace, and we have them eloping. The second, we have Dean and Ali. Dean is going to propose to Ali. And the third one, we have Tucker and Sabrina. Tucker and Sabrina are going on a honeymoon. And the fourth is Garrett and Hannah. And then we have another surprise pregnancy. So, differently from the books itself, my favorite novellas in the Legacy were the ones from Logan and Grace and Tucker and Sabrina. Tucker and Sabrina was actually my favorite novella. I just thought it was quite funny. I gave it 4 stars. For me, the Legacy was a really 4 stars. And I think I forgot to talk about Carrot, but yeah, people hated Carrot because it throws a tantrum, and people were like hating on him because the Carrot wouldn't act like that. Actually, Garrett would, because he was reacting to something that was very traumatic for him. He was like deep crying in this thing that was very traumatic for him, in all those feelings. That was basically a reaction that's like, it was so shitty, but it's understandable. And the Legacy was a 4 stars. So that's basically everything I can say about these books without giving any spoilers. So now we have the spoiler section. So if you don't want to get spoilers about any of the books, click out now. And yeah, give a like, subscribe, and I will see you soon. But if you want spoilers, let's get to it. This is your last call to get out of this video if you don't want any spoilers for the off-campus series. So you have 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's talk spoilers. First we have The Mistake, the first book I read for this video. This is the second book in the off-campus series, and I don't have much to say, honestly, about that book. Actually, when I was kind of doing a mental plan of what I was going to talk in terms of spoilers, I was a bit like, what do I say? Because these are rom-coms, they're kind of predictable. It's kind of their nature to be predictable. So what can I add or discuss in terms of spoilers? I guess for The Mistake, the first thing is one of the reasons why I thought I didn't enjoy that book that much, which is why Logan was chasing Grace. Because at the beginning of the book we find out Logan, he has a crush on Hannah, and he's not, like, he's sad because Hannah is with his best friend. And in the time in between the deal and the mistake, Logan has basically spent drinking and having one-night stands with a variety of different girls because he wants to get Hannah out of his system or out of his head. And in the end, one of those girls ended up being Grace. And one night he backs out and he tells her he's basically only having a fling with her because he still has feelings for his best friend's girlfriend. And that in itself was not the nicest, but okay. But okay, with the right developing of the story, it can be a really strong plot point. But in the end, right after the scene, Logan realizes, or Hannah basically exposes to him, that he doesn't really like her. He basically only wants a relationship. And by this time, Grace is no longer into Logan. Not exactly no longer into Logan, she still likes him in some way, but she's like, she doesn't want nothing to do with him by this point. But Logan decides she is the one for him, and he decides he's going to chase her, and he has this whole inner monologue as if he's in love with Grace, as if Grace, he knows immediately she's the one. But if you do the math, those two, they've basically known each other for like 8 days, 2 weeks, something between 2 weeks, basically. So it's not a long time for him to be so sure she's the one, and he needs to make everything in his power to be with her. And this was after Grace rejected him because he was a dickhead. And if it was just something like, oh, let's try something, or we have this small gap of time where he's trying to get back together with her. But no, Logan spends months trying to get back together with Grace, trying to text her, trying to talk with her, and like by the halfway through the book he spent more time trying to get back in contact with Grace than he spent with Grace, or that he spent knowing who Grace is. So that was kind of weird, and I would say it's one of the reasons why I didn't enjoy that much this book. I just thought Logan was... I was going to say his intentions, but actually I think it's more like his feelings were a little misguided. Now, like every book, even though there were points where I wasn't the biggest fan of The Mistake, there were things about the book that I really enjoyed. One of my favorite scenes from this book was actually when Logan, he discovered Grace had a crush, or basically he caught Grace on a date with this other guy, and Logan went knock on the door of that guy to declare his intentions with Grace. Basically, it was almost like if he was challenging the guy for ado Bridgerton style. That would actually be really fun if Logan challenged the guy for a duel. If you write a novel, maybe add that, because that might be fun. But going back, I like this declaring his intentions for Grace, and then he accidentally becomes really good friends with the guy Grace was on a date with. I thought that plot point was funny. Another plot point I really enjoyed was the third act conflict. Usually I don't enjoy third act conflicts when it comes to romance novels because they tend to include a pointless breakup, a pointless miscommunication that just came out of nowhere and makes zero sense, and it's more they're like, say, oh, we reached like 85%, 90% of novels, so we need a conflict, because these two can't be happy together forever, at least not until we reach the end of the book. But in The Mistake, what I liked was that there wasn't a third act breakup, they just had a really big fight because Logan said something not very nice to Grace while he was having an anxiety attack. He was having a meltdown because of the idea that his time in the university was coming to an end and he would need to take care of his father in the very near future. So I like that the third act breakup was basically a big fight and that it got resolved quickly. So that's all the spoilers I'll talk about for The Mistake. Now let's go for the score. That book had no right being that good and being that fun. And I could talk for quite some time about the score. But let's just talk about my two favorite scenes of this book, which I believe are the two favorite scenes for most people that read this book. The first one is the Winston scene, when Dean is in the bath, and then Logan enters the bathroom looking for his wallet, and he just finds Dean there, sitting the Winston right next to him, and that becomes the long-running joke until the Lexi. We still have that joke going on because Logan doesn't know Ali is actually on the other side of the door. That scene was just hilarious and one of my favorites of the whole series, actually. Now, my favorite scene from the whole series and one of my favorite scenes from all the contemporary romance novels I ever read was the one where Ali had an altercation with her ex-boyfriend and she's crying in her room and Hannah goes to try to help her out, and Ali just turns to Hannah and says, I need Dean. And Hannah is confused, like, Dean? And Ali is like, yeah, I need Dean. And Hannah is confused, like, Dean, are we talking about the same Dean? Are you sure this is the same Dean? And Ali is like, yeah, I need Dean. And then Hannah is still confused. But Dean, that Dean, are we talking about the same Dean? It can't be. It is. And then Dean shows up and he's all like, baby. And then he closes the door in Hannah's face and goes help Ali through what she was going on, through like her mental turmoil. And Garrett and Hannah are behind the door gasping, shocked, because they had no idea about Ali and Dean. The score as a whole, it's not a Pulitzer Prize winning novel, but that scene is a Pulitzer Prize winning scene. Now let's move on from the score to The Go, which is Tucker and Sabrina's book. I was thinking to myself, but I don't really have much spoilers to give. Like, okay, they had a baby. The baby is cute. I don't like that trope. Now moving on from The Go to The Legacy. So The Legacy, as I said previously, it's basically 4 novellas following the 4 couples from the series. The first one is Logan's and Grace. Logan and Grace, they are feeling a distance between them because Logan just started playing in the NHL and he's traveling a lot. Meanwhile, Grace is still in university. She's in her last year of university, so She's spending a lot of time studying. She's also working, I believe, a full-time job, so they don't have much time, much spare time for each other. And when they do, they're usually very tired or their schedules don't match. And basically, they are feeling that distance. So during the New Year's Eve, Logan decides to take them on this skiing trip. The only thing is that he doesn't check the weather, and they end up stranded in the middle of a snowstorm, and the whole scene of the snowstorm is hilarious. Grace suggesting they eat each other in case they get stuck forever in the snow. And then they finally get rescued and they arrive at the bread and breakfast they rented for the New Year's Eve. And it turns out the guy, the host, is a pastor and he makes weddings, so they decide to elope. And yes, it was quite a fun novella, especially because of the whole, they think they're going to die in the middle of the snow. Now let's move on to the second novella, which is The Proposal, which is Alice and Dean's novella. Basically, we start the novella by Dean practicing with Logan and Garrett proposing to Ali, and the whole rehearsing to propose part was funny because Dean keeps getting off rails. Like, the proposal starts cute and then quickly becomes a bit unhinged, and then the friends keep giving him notes, but the notes sometimes are very different from each other. They contradict each other at a lot of times, and the whole scene was funny, but the novella itself as a whole, like, it's okay. The characters, Dean and Ali, they could have dealt better with the situation. But yeah, it was an okay novella. There were some funny scenes. I would say this one. I would say also the one where Ali goes after Dean and she ends up in Logan's room while Logan is naked, and they are basically freaking out because Logan thinks she is another groupie, another Bug Bunny, I believe is how they call them, who invaded his room and is trying to seduce him, because that part of the Bug Bunny happens in the first novella, and it's also quite funny, the whole Logan with the Bug Bunny and then Logan running away for Garrett's room, and then the whole rumor that Logan is having an affair with Garrett. Now, moving on to the third and my favorite novella from the Legacy, which is The Honeymoon, which is the Tucker and Sabrina novella. So Tucker and Sabrina, they just got married, then they're going on a honeymoon, which turns out is also will be the longest time they will be away from their daughter, but also the longest time they will, both of them will spend away from a toddler. And basically from then on, from the moment they enter the plane, everything goes very wrong. The plane, there is a fire or there is a malfunction in the electric panels on the plane, so the plane starts to kind of catch on fire and they need to have an emergency landing, and Tucker and Sabrina are basically freaking out because they think they are going to die, as I think most people would think in a situation like that. They're also stuck behind this elderly couple that keeps bickering the whole flight. Then they do the emergency landing and Tucker starts to get annoyed because throughout the whole time they are in this limbo of being in the airport waiting for a new plane to take them to their honeymoon. Sabrina is basically only worried about making their will because she's sure they are going to die soon because that plane almost fell. So there was that. So after that they catch another plane, they arrive in their honeymoon, which is taking place in Dean's family's vacation home, which is in the Caribbean, and everything seems perfect, awesome. They are in paradise, except that Dean sent them a little gift called Alexander. So Alexander, we are introduced to him in the first novella. He's this very creepy porcelain doll that apparently is haunted, that Dean bought for Tucker's daughter when she was a little baby. And ever since, the four boys in the friend group, they keep mailing Alexander or placing Alexander in each other's homes. It's kind of like a prank, but also because no one wants to save Alexander, because everybody is scared of Alexander because he looks creepy and they say he's haunted by the ghost of a deceased little boy that died during the Cold Rush and that died hugging the doll. They arrive in the beautiful house and there was Alexander. Sabrina starts freaking out because everybody freaks out when Alexander appears. So then they have this grand idea of drowning Alexander or getting rid of Alexander by throwing him in the ocean, because this way they don't need to deal with it. And then Tucker goes in the ocean a few hours later, and what happens? He gets stung by a jellyfish. And then they meet their neighbors, and then the next day they go for dinner in their neighbor's house. And what happens on the way back? Sabrina gets hit in the head by a coconut. And then the next day, what happens? Tucker goes fishing with the neighbors and Sabrina stays reading in the beach, and both of them forget to apply sunscreen and now they are burnt to a crisp. And then the next day, what happens? Alexander drifts back to shore and the neighbors find them. And then Tucker and Sabrina start freaking out. And then what happens after that? Well, later that night, Tucker gets arrested. He was confused as someone that was shoplifting, even though he hasn't left the house for like 5 days at this point. So hilarious. This book is hilarious. And then after that, they learn to live with it and everything goes okay, and then they go back to Boston. Now let's move on to The Legacy, which is the Hannah Garrett novella. I had mixed feelings about this novella from the start because Hannah learns she's pregnant, but she keeps finding excuses as to why not tell Garrett. And okay, she's anxious, she's nervous about having a kid, she thinks she doesn't have a good time to tell him because something is always going on, something with his father, something with the team, them losing the playoffs, like there's always something. She always finds an excuse to not tell Garrett. And as time goes on, she finds less and less opportunities to tell him because Garrett's father shows up again. He went to pose for the pictures, he shows up in an award, then he basically tricks Garrett. He almost obliges Garrett to do this interview, like a travel down memory lane of the happy moments they had as family, comparing the careers of Garrett's father, who is this NHL legend, and the career of Garrett, who is becoming quite a superstar in his own right. And then Garrett is getting like very nervous, very anxious. He's not in a good mindset because his father is trash. His father is Palpatine. His father is truly terrible. If you haven't read the deal, basically Garrett's father physically, emotionally, verbally abused of Garrett and his mother. And Garrett hasn't had much contact with him since the deal. They only they pose for the cameras and pretend to be a happy family, but in reality they don't really talk. So going back, Garrett gets tricked into doing this interview. He's not great because he has been boiling in trauma for a few weeks by now. And then he gets this call from Hannah, not only telling him she is pregnant, but he needs to take her to the hospital because she believes she's losing the baby. Put yourself in Garrett's shoe for a minute. Everything was just like too much for him. So he goes home, he takes Hannah to the hospital, but on the way to the hospital, is the section where everybody keeps hating on Carrot because he throws a tantrum and he basically compares Hannah to his father. The things he said were shitty, were not cool, but it's understandable because he was reacting to a situation, a moment in his life where he was boiling in trauma and he was basically overwhelmed, emotionally overwhelmed. But then in the end, this is a happily ever after. So they are fine. Turns out they are having twins, which what a cliffhanger to hang on. And then we have another part where I really like. Basically, Tucker and Sabrina and their little daughter, Jamie, they go to Carrot and Hannah's house to deliver them a little gift congratulating them on the baby, or on the baby that will be arriving soon. And yes, it is Alexander, but it is not only Alexander. Sabrina and Tucker went online and they found another doll. It's a girl doll that used to belong to a little German girl that carried her all throughout her stay in an insane asylum in Germany. And then they give that to Hannah and Carrot. Just as a silly little prank. That's almost like a recap of the legacy.